I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The first item on the agenda is public comments. Please limit comments to 3 minutes at the microphone. The public comment period is a time slot set aside on the agenda for citizens to address the Board of Education. The Open Meetings Law does not require that citizens be allowed to participate and speak at Board of Education meetings other than public hearings. The law specifies that the public has a right to attend board meetings except for executive sessions. The procedure for public comment is outlined in Board Policy number 1230, Citizen Participation. A total of 30 minutes is set aside for public comment at the beginning and end of the meeting. The maximum time allowed for any one speaker is 3 minutes. Public comments at the beginning of the meeting are limited to items on the agenda. Persons who wish to participate in the public comment portion of the meeting must state their name and a specific topic about which they wish to speak. As speakers must limit comments to issues appropriate for public discussion, compliments or complaints about student discipline, specific student issues, or personnel must not be addressed during public comment. Interruption of board discussion is not permitted. In the interest of civility and respect for different points of view, outbursts from the audience, applause, or other types of disturbances or disruptions are not permitted. Under no circumstances will booing be tolerated. The Board of Education recognizes its responsibility to hear and respond to public comment. As stated in Board Policy number 1230, the Board is not able to answer questions at the meetings, but welcomes your statements. Any questions from the public should be submitted through the use of the public comment form, which may be obtained online or at the desk with the district clerk. Responses will be provided within 48 hours on the district's public comment responses page so that everyone may receive the information. In addition, the members of Central Administration and the board members are available for one-on-one discussion after the meetings if any of you wish to come up and talk with us. Thank you. Right? Anyone who would like to speak may come forward now.
Ed Slowshower, Town of East Fishkill. Agenda items 8.03 and 8.04. A couple of things just personally have a concern with, I just want to share with everybody. Meetings of a committee or subcommittee consisting solely of school board members that discusses or conducts public business are subject to the Open Meetings Law. Meetings of advisory committees are not subject to Open Meetings Law, but there is an exception. If the core membership of that particular advisory group consists of board members, the Open Meetings Law applies. In reviewing the minutes of the Policy Committee, April 13th, March 30th, March 23rd, January 4th. Those meetings are subject to Open Meetings Law because all of the committee members are board members. Now, it can be a bit of a gray area, but what's concerning to me is that for some reason, and of course it's not truly a requirement because as long as the minutes are recorded, that doesn't violate Open Meetings Law. But the inconsistency of no one voting on the minutes at the next meeting of the prior meeting, no motions being made during those meetings. It seems to me that discussions are going on with regards to policies for the district, which is important. Yet, we don't seem to always be following policies. And again, this is my interpretation. I don't see us making a motion as part of a committee. No one is making recommendations of these policies. Is everyone in agreement? Is it just understood because the policies are now being brought before the board for a vote that everyone is in a consensus agreement? Again, there is no motion, there is no second, there's nothing about a discussion, there's not a motion made to present these new policy changes to the board. So what I kind of take issue with is that in terms of, we're not following any best practices here. And I don't understand why we don't do that. We do that with other committees, why we're not doing it with this committee. I understand the committee's done a lot of work and I can appreciate that. But we're not following protocols. We're not having best practices. We're not doing things in a proper way. And that's what I have a bit of a concern with. So I hope moving forward that we'll have some consistency with how our committees are being conducted, where there's dialogue, motions are being made. Again, these are not required, but if we're doing it with other committees, I think it would make sense, and just again, not to be repetitive with our best practices. We're not doing that. I don't think it's that big of a deal. And again, when someone reads this information in the minutes, we're just posting, there's no dialogue, there's no transcribing of conversations in those minutes. We're posting policies in the minutes and that's it. So the public has no idea what's transpiring during those particular committee meetings. Thank you.
Barbara Goodman. Also, agenda item 8.03. I would like to see the board table the second reading and the vote until after the election and a new school board is installed.
Thank you, I think. Okay, I'd like to see the board, I would like to request that the board table the reading and the vote, because in my experience as a teacher in another district, board policies often have unintended consequences in the classroom. And I would like to see teachers and parents consulted and get input and feedback before the board votes to make the policies official. Thank you.
Town of Poughkeepsie. It's also regarding 8.03 on the agenda. Now, there are numerous problems with that. I know we all want to be tolerant of others, and that's fine. But when the tolerance of others requires them going into the bathroom with my daughter, regardless of whether they are male or female genitalia, that should not be permitted. There have to be other safeguards put in place. Just last week, there was an 8-year-old girl in Chicago that was taken, and there was a guy waiting for her in the bathroom, knocked her unconscious, and then her mother heard something and came in and saved her. And she couldn't even do it herself because she could not overpower this guy. Other customers in the restaurant came to her rescue. I have children that when they were younger, they identified as a dog and were biting other people. Are we going to allow students to bite other students? Some of my daughters, they identified, they like cats. Are we going to start putting litter boxes in the schools? We can't do this without having further discussion on the topic and be able to figure out exactly what it means, how the safeguards are going to be put in place for our daughters. I have 2 daughters and 2 nieces in this district. I'm outraged by this, that without any open discussion, and then they're going to you want to vote on it tonight before a new board. Tomorrow, 3 of the board members are finished. We're going to have 3 new board members. They have no vested interest in what happens after tomorrow. And this has to be held off for the new board, because for something like this to go through without smart, open dialogue and explain to the parents, if you want the parents to say, okay, we're okay with it, and you have to be able to discuss it with the parents, explain to them what safeguards are being put in place so that nothing happens to my daughters or my nieces when they go in the bathroom and there's some male in there. And I know adolescent males. I was one myself once. And I know plenty of times when, as an adolescent male, it would have been cool to be able to get into the female locker room. And what safeguards are going to be made for my daughters to keep others from being able to do that? Right now, the common sense is, if you're a male, you don't go in there. And that's the way I was taught, the way I was taught to respect females. And it doesn't mean that I just walk into whatever restroom I want and I can get a sneak peek of whatever I want because of the fact that I can just turn around and claim whatever I want. And do you even realize that 73% of male to female transgenders still prefer to date females? So now, you may have a transgender male going into the female locker room. But it doesn't mean that he identifies as a female and only wants to date males. He still wants to date those females. And if the board goes and does this, then you don't even want to know what I identify the board with.
Roisin Bruda, Town of Wappinger. I am reading this on behalf of a parent who could not attend tonight. I will read just a brief part of it. This is an email that will be sent to the whole board, and I do hope that you will take the time to read this. This is a parent's concern. This parent says, obviously I do not attend many BOE meetings. I view them at home. The last meeting was very concerning to me. She also said, please forgive me because I know that these meetings are videotaped and I cannot expose myself or my family to my ex-husband. So that's why I'm here reading. She said, I witnessed one board member bring up concern she had with the document labeled as I saw it state policy. No one seemed to be concerned. Well, here are my concerns. If any, and this is in relation to 8.03. If any board member has any concerns with any document for any reason, there should be sufficient time for that document to be further reviewed outside of the board that occurring, and that is concerning. If you are not willing to further research material affecting the students, please step off the board. She also further goes on to say, in regards to the 129-page policy document that costs $15,000 to upload, which she also pays $15,000 in property taxes. I barely got through 20 pages and had concerns. A, under the section, instruction in grades kindergarten through 12 shall include a component of civility, citizenship, and character education. Such component shall instruct students on the principles of honesty, tolerance, personal responsibility, respect for others, observance of laws and rules, courtesy, dignity, and other traits which will enhance the quality of their experiences in and contributions to the community. For the purposes of this policy, tolerance, respect for others, and dignity shall include awareness and sensitivity to bullying, discrimination, and/or harassment, and civility in the relations of people of different races, weights, national origins, ethnic groups, religions, religious practices, mental or physical abilities, sexual orientation, gender, and sexes. Such components must also include instruction on the safe and responsible use of the internet and of electronic communications. Her statement to this is, there is a problem with the adaptation of sexual orientation, gender, and sexes under this broad category for instruction to children in elementary and middle school. Do you have any idea what that education is going to entail? But you blindly accepted the state policy without further information or discussion. So I hope that you will read her email. Thank you.
Does anyone else wish to address the board at this time? Seeing no one, we will move on to 4.02, communications and announcements received by the Board of Education. Dr. Rizvi.
Good evening, everyone. I attended the annual Festival of the Art, beautiful exhibit of the student artwork. Congratulations to all the students and the teachers for their hard work. And I also attended the John Jay High School PTSA meeting. Principal Mrs. King was also there. We were thankful for the way she and her school staff handled the emergency holding place at John Jay. And also we talked about parents' information on college career readiness and planning. Some parents recommended grade level guidance, counselor checklist for college readiness. According to the research on the college and career readiness milestones, there are 2 ways to increase college persistence: to make sure high school curriculum is rigorous and make effective guidance program available to students to increase the odds of a suitable student college pair. Thank you.
Mr. Selma? Mrs. Laval? Mr. Rubin?
Got it. Well, I had the privilege of attending a number of functions this past few weeks. Wappingers Junior High School College and Career Fair, the Myers Corners Blood Drive, I made a donation there. Audit Committee meeting, Meet the Candidates Night was very interesting. Wappingers Junior High School National the National Junior Honor Society, I was privileged to be invited to the Sons of Italy Joe DiMaggio Italian Award Ceremony. Capital Improvement Committee, Oak Grove budget presentation. I was also privileged at the Castle Point VA to be participating in their Asian American Pacific Islander Day. But those are all good, but I would like to first off really commend 2 schools. John Jay High School received a very prestigious award. They were nominated as a reward school, which, as I understand it, was attributed to maybe 20% of the schools in the state of New York. And they had to work hard in both ELA and in math, and I was really excited to see that. Congratulations to that school. I also received an email, and I'll just take a time to read this, in regards to a teacher at Roy Ketchum High School. In 2014, the new National Core art standards were established for all the art disciplines: music, dance, theater, visual art, and for the first time as a new arts discipline, media arts. In February of 2016, 11 art educators from around the country were chosen to implement the model cornerstone assessments for media arts at the secondary level. Roy C. Ketchum's Robert Wood was one of those 11 educators chosen for this task, the only art educator in New York State. It just goes on to say that, on a side note, Mr. Wood is also chairing the writing team for media arts for the New York State Standards revision project taking place in the State Education Department. I think that is just a wonderful statement about him and what the school has to offer. And speaking about what school has to offer, this past Saturday, I was very pleased to see these 2 pages in the Poughkeepsie Journal attributed to Wappingers about arts in the park. And a full page of sports attributed to Wappingers. So kudos to the district on both levels. And I will just leave that there for a few seconds. If anybody wants to see that, it'll be around, available. I'm very proud of these kids, Mr. Lumia.
I'm surprised that they're so published. I'm shocked, in fact. Pleasantly surprised.
Thank you.
Mrs. Karat?
Yes, I also
You want this one? This one is.
I also attended the Van Wyck Junior High School Junior Honor Society induction. 166 students were inducted, and I was very honored to be a part of that. I also want to commend Dr. Shukat's staff and the students who helped put on, I hear, they put on a wonderful luncheon for the 10th annual luncheon for the town of Wappinger seniors. They received a letter from the organization, from the senior center in the town of Wappinger, and everyone who attended had a wonderful time, and so I wanted to bring that to everyone's attention. They performed, the chorus performed, and as well as the orchestra. So kudos all around to the kids that took time out to participate in that. And the only other thing that I was able to attend was on behalf of the board was the Dutchess County School Boards Association, and I will be emailing you all the minutes to that so that you can see what transpired there.
Mrs. Pelton?
We'll see.
Now that the program is underway, I wanted to take a moment. I'm happy to help facilitate a partnership with the United States Tennis Association, which has donated close to $400 worth of equipment to several of our schools, and with the hopes of adding more schools to that list. In addition to that, we have Taconic Racket Club, which is donating before school intramurals to these schools. And in their first week, they have worked with over 100 students, and so that this week they had more show up. So I'm excited to watch that program grow. It is at no cost to our students or our district.
Mr. Lillian?
First of all, I'd like to thank Mr. Joseph Zingoni and Mr. Pasquale Della Carpini for hosting for the past 28 years, awards night given to students who maintain an average of 90 and above in Italian. There were over 400 students who received that particular award, so congratulations to the students and to the dedication, 28-year dedication Zingoni and Mr. Della Carpini. I'd also like to congratulate the scholar athletes, the spring scholar athletes in both schools. I mean, the list is a big list, so I'll mention them. RCK baseball, RCK golf, boys golf, RCK boys spring track, RCK girls spring track, RCK boys tennis, Wappinger boys lacrosse, Wappinger girls lacrosse, Wappinger girls golf, John Jay baseball, John Jay boys golf, John Jay boys spring track, John Jay girls spring track, John Jay boys tennis, and John Jay softball. In order to be recognized, these scholar athletes have to maintain an average of 90 and above, if I'm not mistaken. That's quite an accomplishment. As a former coach, as a track coach, it takes a lot of time to be an athlete. And the fact that these kids achieve that particular award for these teams is really says something for the teachers. So congratulations to the teachers and of course the students. I also attended the 66 years of Arts in the Park. 66 years of dedication on the part of the teachers. Work tirelessly to put the arts in the park and make it effective. If you went there, you saw phenomenal art. The kids are really talented, not only art, but also in music. I love attending a particular event every single year. Of course, I also attended the Capital Improvement Committee and other things which have been mentioned before. So congratulations to all the scholar athletes. Congratulations to Mr. Zingoni and Mr. LaCarpini. And of course to John Jay for being elected and receiving such a prestigious award. Thank you.
I attended the Capital Improvement Committee chaired by Mr. Lumia, the Audit Committee chaired by Mr. Rubin, the Dutchess County School Boards Association, where I accompanied our representative to the School Boards Association, the Junior Honor Society at Van Wyck, and also the interviews for principal of RCK, and the candidates night put on by the PTA Council so that the whole community can learn more about our candidates. Thank you.
I just want
Yes,
to, I'd like to also mention the people who were present at the Italian event this past Friday. First of all, they had the Minister of Education from the Italian Embassy, the name of Carlo Davoli. There's also Robert Fiorito, New York State First Vice President of the Sons of Italy, and Louis Gallo, New York Commissioner for Social Justice from New York State. So they gave phenomenal speeches, and I'd like to thank them for coming up. One person came all the way from Long Island to a 3-hour drive, and I tell you, I appreciate them coming.
One came from Italy.
And one was born in Messina, actually. But I mentioned that only second to Palermo, Sicily.
Thank you. I was very sorry to miss the Festival of the Arts for the first time in many years. And also the Italian Honor Society. I was out of town for my college reunion, so. All right, next we have the Spotlight on Program as part of the Superintendent's Report. Hi, Dave.
Good evening, Board of Education. Good evening, everyone. Today it's very exciting. Every month we have a meeting twice a month, and once a month this is my favorite time because this is why we are here. We are here to continue to make great things happen for our students. And as we continue to promote student success, we're promoting student success with a presentation on Pi Day, and we're highlighting all of our students. I believe I took pictures with them the day of our Pi ceremony. But overall, I'd like to begin and just hand over the spotlight to Dr. Miller, who is the executive director of the Math Physics Explore program. And the amazing things that the students are doing and this level of exploration, it's something that it really needs to be highlighted and needs to be shared so that we can continue to grow this program and we can continue to have students really express an interest in math and physics. And it just brings joy to my heart too as well as we continue to move forward. Boys have traditionally gone through this path, and I see an increase in young ladies that are here today that are part of the math and physics exploration. You keep going and you keep heading in that direction. So with no further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Edward Miller.
Superintendent Karian for such a wonderful introduction, and I'd like to thank Ms. Kellen and the rest of the board for allowing me to meet and your wonderful students to make this presentation this evening. And I wasn't given instructions on how to use this, so
You're doing fine.
Okay, so can everybody see the charts up there? Okay, so the goal that I had was to reach out to as many children in the Wappinger Central School District to give them the best possible math education. And later on, these children will tell you whether we achieved that goal or not. And I would like to thank Dr. Cardwell, Mr. Mensch, Principal Sykes, who tested a pilot program with the top 5th and 6th grade students in Fishkill Plains Elementary. The program that I did with them has been developed over a 10-year period, and in my opinion, greatly enhances Common Core and other well-known math programs. And you'll get to see evidence of that this evening. The feedback that we got from some of the students, whether they felt that they were challenged, it built their confidence, and this was something that made me feel really good because when I was a middle schooler, I really didn't understand math as well as I thought. And from that experience, I wanted to make sure that other children would do far better than I did. And then to extend their problem-solving capabilities. So, okay, so I missed the slide. Okay, this is sort of the heart of the whole thing. I call the 12 labors of Minerva, named after the goddess of wisdom. I thought that Athena was overused, and I figured that since I would like to really make girls really good students, that I honor those 12 labors after Minerva rather than Hercules. The program these children went through, in some cases, exceeded what the seniors learn, and exceed many of the things that I learned and other people learn. So even something as simple as long multiplication, these kids can do 18 by 18 multiplication. In my experience, a lot of kids couldn't go beyond 3 by 3. They also learn to prove why negative numbers work the way they do and why fractions. I know in the Common Core this was a big thing to emphasize, but these kids can prove these things like you would geometry do. And they're only 6th grade, not 10th graders. Magic Square was one of the fun things they loved to do. And then the other which I started but didn't have time to complete was to show them how to raise a number to a decimal power. And what I try to do is take my curiosity and share it with them so that they would challenge me, which they did a number of times, to think beyond what they had been taught. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I want to highlight 2 of them. The 6th one is basically where I want to try to get the 5th graders to. This basically takes and makes use of the binomial expansion, which you don't get to around the 10th grade, allows them to develop the exponential series. I've tested this particular thing on 6th graders in other schools, and they really get excited over this stuff, and they see things that we never saw before. And the other one was number 9, which is, what's the next chart over? Number 9, which is to show them how to do derivative calculus. I'm doing this now with the 6th grader in another school, so I can do it right in this school. And basically, there's a lot to be learned as you watch the kids. And one of the things I found in working with them was to try to be sensitive to each child's needs, because everyone is different, and to give them as much courage as I can, and to force them to challenge me. And I hope they'll bring up some of the, well, I'm sure they will bring up some of these points. Okay, here is the children up here. If you look very closely in the corner, you will see Superintendent Carrier. And over here, our Congressman Chris Gibson, and over here, Jose Oliveri, who wished we'd had the program in his school. So I'm hoping he'll encourage you guys to let that happen. And you'll meet each one of these individually in a minute. But I also wanted to recognize some of the children in Oliveri School. So these are 2 of the math count students. And in here, there are various schools represented. I had the good fortune of being the math counts coach for both middle schools in Arlington at different times. So this year my math counts team was competing against my math counts team from the previous year. And I was a little bit frightened when I saw that Wampus was having a math counts team, because they had never had one in the district before. So I was really delighted to see that happen. This is the article in the newspaper, the Poughkeepsie Journal. You've seen this picture, and this picture was included to show some of the keynote speakers. I brought this one up because this is a student that was in the Arlington district. He's gone through all 12 labors of Minerva, but he transferred out of Arlington into your school district, and I lost contact with him. Mrs. Watkins has looked him up. His name is Shiraz Shajantani, and with a little bit more effort, he could be the first one to pass these 12 labors. So I'm hoping you guys will let me work with them to get him to that test, because this would be, he's an 8th grade student now, and the stuff he would do would be putting the 12th graders to shame in every school district in the county. So please find us for me. Okay, and this was a copy of the article in the Southern Dutchess News. We got about 5 newspapers that we got to recognize this, because I thought it was important that these people be recognized. So now, without a further ado, can you want to have them come up?
Sure, they could just line up.
Okay, guys, so line up. I'll take the microphone over here. Okay, so who would like to be the first to speak?
Hello everyone, my name is Sydney O'Connor, and I was so fortunate to have this opportunity to participate in this math program and be taught by such an amazing math teacher, Dr. Miller. And the things I learned, I really never imagined, and so thank you everybody that made this possible.
Good evening. I'm Andrew Check, and I am a fifth grader at Fishkill Plains, and I was in Dr. Miller's accelerated math program, and I learned a lot, such as the first 3 digits of the square root 10, and I'm very fortunate that I got this program. I think board members will have it.
Hello, my name is Scott McStay, and I believe that I was very fortunate to have this program. We learned many things, such as acid T. It's an abbreviation to help us learn all the properties we use for math. And also, I think the board should continue this program for other schools too. So I enjoyed it a lot and learned a lot.
Hi, my name is Matthew Krause, and I'm a fifth grade student in Dr. Miller's Math Enrichment Program. And I learned a lot, just like Scott said, including the acid T and also 18 by 18 multiplication, and my favorite one, which was magic square. Which we learned.
Hi, my name is Erica Houston, and I just love the program so much. I learned a lot of the binary number system, and I had no idea what factorials were, and that the exclamation point was a math term. So, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Ashley Q, and this math enrichment program is really interesting, and it made math more fun, and it gave a really different look to math.
Hello, my name is Ryan Hardy, and I'm very fortunate to have the opportunity to been in this math enrichment club. Dr. Miller was a great teacher, and he really helped me grow as a student.
My name's Ben Sobel, and this program really built up my confidence, and I learned how to do negative factorials, which we figured out computers could do, and I really enjoyed it.
Hello everyone, my name is Antonio Bugalo, and I would like to say that Dr. Miller's Math Enrichment Program has really inspired me to be the best person that I can be, and this class has boosted my self-confidence and expanded my view to new things, and I'm very fortunate to have been given the opportunity to participate in the program.
Hi, my name is Catherine Eric, and I was very fortunate to be in math enrichment. Like Ben and Dr. Miller had said earlier, it's really, and Antonio, it's really confident boosting and self-confidence, and it helps me to set goals in life.
Hi, my name is Jeffrey Shaw, and I'm really glad that I decided to do the Math Enrichment Club because I learned that math could actually be really fun with like the magic square and those kind of like formulas to do them. So yeah.
Hi, my name is Brennan Chung, and this program I was very fortunate to have because this took my love of math to a whole new level. Like learning 3 by 3 magic square was one of my favorites.
Hi, my name is Ken Parker, and I learned that math is just not numbers, and it really boosts up my self-confidence. And I didn't know like math had different ways to solve things.
Hello, my name is Michael Whisker, and I am fortunate to have this wonderful opportunity to look at math a different way and to solve problems like 3 by 3 magic square. Thank you for your cooperation, especially Dr. Miller.
You probably heard 3 words that you thought you'd never hear before this evening. I love math.
If I could just, in wrapping up, just take this opportunity to thank Dr. Miller. He spent over 30 hours with 15 of our selected students before school. So not only did they go through the expected coursework on every given day, he met 8 o'clock 3 times in the morning before school with Dr. Miller, and he really challenged them. They were here bright and early, and they always would say to me that, you know, they had no problem getting on time to school when we had our math enrichment program. So I commend these 15 students. I think they deserve a huge round of applause. So obviously, I'm grateful for Dr. Miller and his volunteering his time to our selected students. I'd also like to thank Dr. Cardwell and Mr. Mensch for making this possible. And Mr. Schukat, or Dr. Schukat, you and I should speak because the majority of these students are 6th graders and they're asking for the continuation of this program next year as 7th graders. So thank you again.
Well, we do have math talent.
Great, thank you.
Thank you again. That was awesome. I really enjoyed it.
Mr. Lumia.
So we have an opening in the mathematics department next year. I would like to thank Dr. Miller. It's amazing what students can do when properly motivated. So I'd like to thank him. He's done a fantastic job for the students and for the whole district. And when challenged and have good teachers, guess what? This is the end result. So congratulations to the students, and in particular, I'd like to thank Dr. Miller for his hard work.
Thank you.
And the parents are getting students there early. But I think the students force the parents to get them there.
Dr. Risby.
I just want to say a few words about Dr. Miller. Dr. Miller is an incredible math and physics teacher who helps students understand Common Core and other amazing math techniques. Once he said, I teach these kids what Common Core would like to be in 15 years. So many school districts are celebrating Pi Day, and thank you, Dr. Miller, for your great work. And also congratulations to all these bright little kids who are sitting here and their parents and completing a Pi Day program. Great job. Thank you.
I guess I'm not going to say the same thing because I really believe in efficacy of time. So they both said what I was going to also say. I'd just like to mention one thing. Someone mentioned, I think it's a great line. Through this program, I also learned that math is just more than numbers. And that is so important as you continue to grow and as you continue to learn more about mathematics, because it truly is its own language. And for you to really realize that now, that's great. So continue to do the great work that you're doing and just be challenged by it. Have fun. Continue. So congratulations to all of the Fishkill Plain students. Dr. Miller, thank you, thank you, thank you. And Mr. Sight, we are very appreciative of the work that you're doing and you continue to do at Fishkill Plain. So thank you as well. And to all the parents, congratulations. You can't be happier. And you don't have to feel as if you have to stay. I'm sure some of them are thinking, how do we see that? How do we get out of here? Well, the high school students do it twice a month. They get their signatures, they stick around for a little while, and they have to go to bed because you do lessons tomorrow. So we completely understand. As we continue with the superintendent's report,
1 minute applause.
Dr. Miller? It's appreciated at 11. I don't know if I can pass it.
John, my day I celebrate purpose. I celebrate my day of purpose. John, perfect. That's how I celebrate my day of purpose.
It's hard to believe you guys did negative factorial. That means you're differential equation. That's incredible. That's what happened.
In here? They meet in the business.
Okay, as we continue. I think it's important to highlight tomorrow is a big voting day throughout the state of New York, not just for the Wapanger Central School District community, but throughout the entire state of New York, 733 school districts, I believe. So I wanted to continue to highlight the work of this team, and in particular Ms. Kristen Crandall, who has done a phenomenal job throughout this entire process and really keeping us abreast of updates from the State Education Department as well as from the Governor's office. So I'd like to share this. In the spring of 2014, the Governor proposed and the House has passed legislation, the call for tax relief for homeowners. This two-year program, 2014 and 15, and the 2015-16 school year, mandated that if taxpayers were to receive this relief, that both school districts and local municipalities had to prepare budgets that complied with the legislation and or participate in an efficiency plan as approved by New York State. This legislation was called the Property Freeze Tax Credit. In 2014-15, school districts had to prepare a budget that was within the tax cap legislation as mandated. Wapanger Central School District was successful in achieving this benchmark, and taxpayers received the tax relief for that school year. In the 2015 school year, school districts had to not only have a budget that was within the tax cap, but also have a New York State approved efficiency plan. Wapinger's worked with Dutchess County, BOCES, and the other districts in the county to create an efficiency plan for submission to New York State. I don't know if you remember, I had mentioned one time also publicly, as well as with the board shared in my weekly memo, Wappinger served as lead agency for this reporting in July 2015. This cooperative plan was approved by New York State, and once again, the legislation mandates were made, and the Wapanger Central School District taxpayers received tax relief. At this time, there's no incentive for the 2016-17 school year, and the district has been diligent, and I'm very proud to say that the district has been diligent in continuing to keep the budget within the tax cap and find cooperative and efficient means to operate on a day-to-day basis. The budget and the 4 propositions are proof of such proactive work. This budget and the 4 propositions are part of this continued work, and of course, the one is the budget, and the capital project, the change in scope, as well as the bus vehicle replacement and the repair reserve funds. So it's important to understand that this administration and past administrations that I have the pleasure of working with, former Superintendent Pocatesta, we've been fiscally diligent in the past and the present, and it is our goal to continue to remain fiscally prudent as we continue to work for the betterment of the Wapanger Central School District community. In addition, speaking of being fiscally prudent and just thinking of sharing with the community as well as with the board, the bid award, there was a question, the bid award Wapanger Junior High School's asbestos abatement, which is what is the maximum dollar amount for this contract, and who is the person or people with the authority to authorize additional asbestos removal at a cost of $15 a square foot. Well, the contract cost for removal is $41,895. I would be the one approving any additional work as long as it does not exceed as long as it does not exceed the Board of Education pre-authorized $5,000 amount for change orders. The total budget cost for this project is $65,000. This includes architect fees, new carpet, labor, and materials for installation, which I get to pick the color for the new carpet. And the Board of Education will be approving the total budget for this project on their June 6th meeting. I don't want this to go out publicly, but that's not true. I will be canvassing the students at Wappingers Junior High School and really getting an idea of what color they really want for the new carpet.
Oh, good.
Always inclusive. Okay, thank you, and wanted to share that as my final part of the report.
Thank you.
The next item is the consent agenda. Does any member of the board wish to remove anything from the consent agenda? Mrs. Lavon.
6.04.
6.04. Anyone else?
Yep. Resolved that the Board of Education does hereby approve the following consent agenda items as stated: 6.02, 6.03, 6.05, 6.06, 6.07, 6.08, 6.09, 6.10, 6.11, 6.12, 6.13, and 6.14.
Do we have a motion? Mr. Selma, second. Mr. Lumia. All those in favor? Unanimous. 6.04.
Resolved, 6.04, approval of CSE/CPSE recommendations. Resolved that the Board of Education does hereby approve the CSE/CPSE recommendations.
Motion. Mr. Lumia, second. Mr. Selma, discussion.
Just an individual vote.
Oh, all right, just an individual vote, because, okay, fine. All right, all those in favor of 6.04? Mr. Lumia, Mrs. Pelton, Mrs. Carra, Mr. Rubin, Mr. Selma, Dr. Risby, Mrs. Kelland. Opposed? Abstention? Mrs. Lavon. Thank you. Yes. 7.01, approval of 2016-2017 tax anticipation note.
A resolution delegating to the President of the Board of Education of the Wappinger Central School District, Dutchess and Putnam Counties, New York, the power to authorize the issuance of and to sell not to exceed $5,500,000 tax anticipation note of said school district in anticipation of the collection of taxes levied or to be levied for the fiscal year of said school district commencing July 1, 2016. Be it resolved by the Board of Education of the Wappinger Central School District, Dutchess and Putnam Counties, New York, as follows. Section 1, subject to the provisions of the local finance law, the power to authorize the issuance of and to sell not to exceed $5,500,000 tax anticipation notes of the Wappinger Central School District, Dutchess and Putnam Counties, New York, including renewals thereof, in anticipation of the collection of taxes levied or to be levied for the fiscal year of said school district commencing July 1, 2016, is hereby delegated to the President of the Board of Education. Such notes shall be of such terms, form, and contents, and shall be sold in such a manner as may be prescribed by said President of the Board of Education, consistent with the provisions of the local finance law.
Lest anyone think otherwise, I don't personally do that. We do it on advice of all the experts. All right, could we have a motion? Mr. Rubin, second. Mr. Lumia, discussion. Mr. Rubin.
Carry on, you were really kind of getting back to me, but for the public to know, I'd ask you about the end date, so to speak, the end line on this. If you could just bring that up, that would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. The end date really starts when we start borrowing. So it's anywhere from 90 to 100 days from the official time of when we start borrowing.
Mrs. Crandall, would you like to give any?
Nope, just standing here.
Right. Just waiting for anticipating any other questions.
I was like, where is she? Where is she?
Does any other member of the board have a question?
Just out of curiosity.
Mr. Lemire.
Why is it?
John.
I'm sure people can hear me.
It's for that purpose.
Just a quick question. I know we have to borrow from someone to pay some work. Is it possible, is it legal to take that money out of the fund balance and then at the end replace the fund balance by the tax which I collected, so we have to borrow money and pay interest?
Normally, fund balance is not used for that purpose.
I know that.
So while we have to pay a minimal amount of interest, we're also doing it the correct way as per state education law, as a tax anticipation note is an approved method of borrowing by New York State. So it's
by
not
law,
favorable. By law,
by law, we cannot do that.
it is favorable to.
I understand that.
I don't know if it's legal or not. I can tell you it's not best practice, and we like best practice.
But it seems to me if money's in the fund balance, the more than we need, if that's the case.
But Mr. Looney has cash. We need cash to operate. So fund balance, while we have fund balance, it's not necessarily cash in the bank. So we need cash to pay for payroll, we need cash to pay for sustainments, et cetera.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All those in favor? Unanimous. 7.02, approval of dedication of Wapatos Junior High School gym, Gary Ficker.
Whereas Gary Ficker has been a physical education teacher of the Washington Central School District for 44 years, and whereas a plaque shall be inscribed and placed over the gymnasium door for current and future students to see how one of our teachers embodied our district's mission statement by following his passion, and therefore be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Wappinger Central School District does hereby rename the Wappinger Junior High School gym the Gary Ficker Gymnasium.
Motion. Mrs. Karat, second. Mr. Selma, discussion. All those in favor? Unanimous.
I just wanted to say something quickly, and I see that Ms. Mead is back here somewhere, and also Ms. Drone, who worked at Wappinger Junior High School. Anyone else from Wappinger Junior High School? Everything is the same. Okay. Wow, you learn something every day. What I understand from Mr. Ficker is that he's definitely a genuine individual who doesn't really like the spotlight on him. So the idea of really providing him with this honor is a great one for someone who's humble, who doesn't really like to have the spotlight on him. But 42 years of dedication to the district, it's a great, 44 years, it's remarkable. So congratulations to Mr. Victor.
Congratulations.
8.02, acceptance of the agreement, 8.1, sorry, we're jumping ahead. 8.01, acceptance of the internal risk assessment and corrective action plan 2015-2016.
Resolved that the Board of Education does hereby accept the internal risk assessment 2015-2016 along with the corrective action plan as recommended by the Board's Audit Committee and the Superintendent of Schools.
Motion. Mrs. Pelton, second. Mr. Lumia. Discussion. Did you want to say anything about it, Mrs. Chair of the Audit Committee? Mrs. Crandall? All right. All All those in favor? Unanimous. 8.02, acceptance of the agreed upon procedures and corrective action plan for 2014-2015.
Resolved that the Board of Education does hereby accept the agreed upon procedures 2014-2015 along with the corrective action plan as recommended by the Board's Audit Committee and the Superintendent of Schools.
Motion, Mr. Soma, second. Mr. Lumia, discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. 8.03, second reading and adoption of policies.
Resolved that the Board of Education...
Wait a second. Is there anyone who would like to pull something from this? Yes. Can we do it that way? Yes. Mrs. Pelton?
We pull it now or when it's first read? We would pull that now or we would first read the resolution? Should we pull that now or should we read the resolution?
Let's read the resolution.
Right, read the resolution.
All right. Okay.
Resolved that the Board of Education of the Wapentris Central School District does hereby approve the second reading of and adopts the following board policies based upon the first readings by the board and the recommendation of the policy committee as stated.
All right. Is a motion?
Discussion.
We have a motion.
Second.
Mr. Selma, second. Mrs. Karat? All right. Discussion. Mrs. Pelton?
Are we looking for discussion or just for a polling? I think
Well,
that
if you want to pull something, I guess we can do that as part of the discussion. Yeah.
There's actually a few things that I would like to bring attention to, if that's okay, or if I need to just pull something specifically.
You can do both. You're going to, Mrs. Pelton is chair of the policy committee, so perhaps she could explain some of the things that perhaps people might have questions about.
As chair of the policy committee, I wanted to be clear that all committees are supposed to act on either a board-approved charter of the board or absolute directives that have been approved by the board. The three directives that were given to the policy committee were to ensure that our policies complied with law, to bring about certain policies to our administrators, to ensure that they were current practice, some things that should be going on that maybe not be going on, passing those along through administration, and to review suggestions to improve policies by NISBA or by the community as they came forward. Those were the three directives. With that being said, I think it would be remiss not to have a conversation about what is being said here at this meeting, at past meetings, and any emails that I have received regarding policy. Again, I'm the messenger. Those are my three directives. So I'm going to start with one polling, and I think it's important that everybody understand why. I'm requesting that policy 2250 be tabled. The reason why I'm requesting that policy to be tabled is we have received further suggestions that articulate that particular policy more. And I think that because the policy committee has not had time to meet and discuss what conversations have come in through email or just verbal communications, that we need to table that so that the policy committee can review comments.
Okay. Do you,
Let me just ask, if I may.
Yes, certainly.
Mrs. Pedro, just a question. At this point, would it be appropriate to vote on the tabling of that one last
Yes, she's
item?
making a motion to table, so then we need the second and then a vote.
Okay. All right. Do we have a second for tabling that? Mr. Rubin. All right. I think there's no discussion on tabling, I believe. We just vote. All right. All those in favor of tabling policy 2250? Unanimous.
I would like to extend this conversation, now that that vote is taken care of, to the issues that have been brought about regarding the transgender bathrooms. So again, I am the messenger, and I have 3 directives, and one is to comply with law. And I have reached out to try to find where there's flexibility, and I will read this to the board. I will pass this around if necessary, but in adhering to that directive from the U.S. Department of Education and Justice, the guidance that they have given to school districts, to universities and colleges, is to respond promptly and effectively to sex-based harassment of all students, including harassment based on a student's actual or perceived gender identity, transgender status, or gender transition. Treat students consistent with their gender identity, even if their school records or identification documents indicate a different sex. Allow students to participate in sex-segregated activities and access sex-segregated facilities consistent with their gender identity, and protect students' privacy related to their transgender status under Title IX and the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. I pulled that out, and the other component to what was given from the U.S. Department of Education and Justice was that the guidance explains that when students or their parents, as appropriate, notify a school that a student is transgender, the school must treat the student consistent with the student's gender identity. A school may not require transgender students to have a medical diagnosis, undergo any medical treatment, or produce a birth certificate or other identification document before treating them consistent with their gender identity. I am reading the law. What this board chooses to do with this information is up to the board. I'm complying with the directive as the policy chair to bring that policy in front of the board.
Any other further discussion? Mrs. Lavelle.
There are.
You got it? There's none but, you said it.
Yeah.
Is that it?
It's, yep, there.
There are 62 policies here, and I've tried to just go through them and just come up with specific concerns, and I have come up with specific concerns in specific policies, but I have to agree with several of the members of the public who stood up and spoke. I think that these policies warrant significant further discussion, and I would like to motion that that we table this vote. Partially because I personally focused on certain items and just haven't been able to look at all of them. I think, there's a lot here. They warrant a lot of attention. I think they're worth the discussion, and I would like to motion that we table the vote in its entirety. So I would like the opportunity to discuss further, particularly with the policy committee members who were involved in this. I think there's a lot of issues. My understanding is that the directive is not law. It's a condition of federal funding, and so it's not at the level of being mandated as a legal concern. I recognize the implications of the idea that there's funding attached to it. I don't think that there's a definitive line that says that
we are going to lose funding. I know it's been said that that would happen, but I don't know that there's evidence that that would happen. I just think there's a lot of investigation that we could still do. I think by adopting these policies under the conditions where there is so much public outcry and discussion, we run the risk of, if it's challenged, if it's changed, we're going to wind up with policy that could be potentially in conflict with laws if this is challenged either legislatively or judiciously. There's a lot of reasons why I think this needs to be further discussed. I think the community is asking us for further investigation and discussing, and so I would like to motion that we table the vote and perhaps come back next time with what we're sure we're comfortable with, and then further discussion as needed with any specific items.
I have a point of order. I have a point of order.
Yes, Mr. Rubin.
Point of order, please. Just for my own clarification, Mr. Pedro, perhaps you can answer this, that in the event that these remaining policies are voted on tonight and passed, would that preclude a board member from pursuing the questions that he or she has with either the entire board or the policy, maybe the policy committee, pursuing in an appropriate manner those questions to get answers, and then if they're still uncomfortable with that, asking for a recommendation, asking to or to recommend that a particular policy or policies be reviewed again. Would that preclude that?
My understanding is once policies are adopted, I must follow the board policy of disseminating the information to staff and the community. If a board member wanted to make further changes, that would go back before the policy committee, and where that would be discussed there and brought back to the board's table.
Thank you.
Just a point of clarification, this directive from the U.S. Department of Education was not the first part. It was in response to a ruling by a judge in New York State first, and then the federal judiciary who said that this is what has to be done and this is the law. And so it's not, this is further along in the process than it going before the courts. It's already been before the courts. Of course, it's always possible someone might bring another case with slightly different and a different ruling might come, but as of now, this was given to us by the New York State School Boards Association as the current law as decided in New York State before this federal case came up. So that's why it was included in the policy manual, because we're required to include anything that's in New York State law. However we may feel about it, of course the implementation of any policy is up to the administration, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of consideration and talk and dialogue about that. Yes, Mr. Lillian.
Just a point of information, the only person who can bring back a policy is one who voted for it. If they vote against it, you can't bring it back. The only people allowed to bring back any policy is the people who voted for that particular change. Secondly, there's a lot of policies here, a lot of them. Many of them have nothing to do with what was talked about before. Building usage fee schedule, sternal fuel use policy, relation with non-public schools, homeschool students, parental involvement, Title I parental involvement, relation with person with disability, relation with person, I go on and on and on. Many of these policies have nothing to do with what we're talking about. Secondly, we have had more than 2 weeks, I believe, in looking at these policies and making specific suggestions and how we would like to see the policy change. I made some suggestions, and I believe, Mr. Have you received any other suggestions specifically to a specific policy by any other board member or by the community? So it seems to me to wait till tonight.
Just the ones I addressed.
So it seems to me it's to table everything. To me, it's an injustice to the people who've been working on these particular policies diligently for the last whatever it is. So as far as I'm concerned, a lot of these policies have nothing to do with what some of us may consider offensive.
Just a minute. Thank you, Mr. Lumia, but we never had a second for tabling it. Mr. Rubin put forth a point of order, and so maybe what we need to do first is get a second for tabling it, if anyone wishes to second the motion to table. Mr. Rubin. All right, there's no discussion on a motion to table, so all those in favor of tabling the policies. Mrs. Laval and Mr. Rubin. All those opposed to tabling all the policies? Mr. Lumia, Mrs. Pelton, Mr. Selma, Dr. Risby, Mrs. Kellen. Abstention? Mrs. Karam. The motion to table fails.
Can we go on with discussion?
Yeah, yes, we're discussing the, yes.
Oh, sorry.
Mrs. Karam?
No. Don't go for that.
I abstained because I want to see if we could agree on passing many of the policies that Mr. Lumia was making his point about, which is basically, President Kellen, that we have a policy manual that's a fluid document that's living and working now, right now. All of these provisions in some way, shape, or form are in the current policy manual. This is not brand new. Yes, there have been revisions to certain policies. There's been suggested language. I have a question, President Kellen, whether or not, if we were to agree to pass certain policies tonight and then to table others for a later date, would we be able to, after we've hashed out those other policies and added them to the document, can a board member bring up a policy and ask to have it put on the agenda for further discussion 6 months from now?
The only people, the only people, look, if somebody, if a member of the public or student of the board decides to specifically state that a particular policy should be changed, or words should be changed, if, unfortunately, if they voted against this year, they can't bring that back.
So if we were to have a positive...
However, if, for example, she's the chairman of the board, she's chairman of the policy committee, she's convinced of the arguments made, then she can bring it back.
So the chair of the policy committee can bring back...
Anybody can bring it back.
And
the five of us voted to adopt the policies. If anyone here decides, says, look, I don't particularly like policy 10115, they make that point, obviously, they would bring that to those particular issues to the policy committee. The policy committee, you're in the policy committee, you're in the policy committee, and I believe in the policy committee. But it seems to me you three, or if the whole thing is sent to the entire board, any one of 5 of us could bring the policy back.
Okay,
I say, okay, I agree with the changes, that's a wish, then we go
okay,
forward.
because this is a working document. It doesn't have to be perfect going in. It never is perfect. So that, what my point is that I think we owe it to our school community to allow these policies to stand and let the process continue, whereby we either bring it to the committee's attention or we bring it to all board members' attention that we still strongly feel that the wording of a certain policy needs to have further review.
Just a little bit of clarification. It looks like a great many policies. Most of this was the extremely minor grammatical changes or small changes to bring it in accordance with current law. The policy manual had not been reviewed since 1994 in its entirety. Individual policies had been updated, but not the whole thing, and of course things fell through the cracks. This policy committee has been working for months on the policies, and it's a culmination of work that they have been doing for quite a while. Yes, Mrs. Laval.
the policy committee, and I appreciate the tremendous work that they've done, having worked on this for some time. I'm not on the policy committee, I'm on the personnel committee, and I'm on the audit committee, so I didn't participate in the discussion. The fact that some of these are, fairly general, generic kind of policies, they're all grouped together. There's 62 policies here. There's 129 pages. And some of this is very, very complex policy. Very, very, I think, presents exposure for us. It's not a fluid document. We can't, we haven't looked at it in 20 some odd years, some of these policies, okay? So this is our opportunity to make sure that we're doing this right. We can't bring it back unless somebody who votes for it decides that they want to bring it back. So it's not something that is, that's ongoing. Once we do this, it's done, and we're not going to do it again for 3 years unless somebody brings something specific back. So I don't understand the urgency, and I'm expressing to you that I did spend a significant amount of time reading and investigating and getting information. I also requested some information that I haven't received yet, that I haven't had an opportunity to produce. So I'm not sitting on my hands. I'm not here saying, this, dismissing this or not, not doing my due diligence. I looked at these policies. I have significant concerns, but I was focused on the ones that I'm most concerned about. And so, as much as the rest of them may be rather innocuous, I didn't get a chance to look at them because I've been focusing on the ones that I think really present concerns. So I'm asking, it's moot, but all I'm asking for is time. I don't see the urgency in passing these when we know once it's done, it's pretty much done. If that's not going to happen because you voted no, then at the very least, I have significant concerns again, and I can go through them before we vote on them, or I can make a motion to pull them. But we're talking, just because it came down as a regulation doesn't mean it's appropriate for us. It doesn't mean that we should enshrine it in our policy document. We're talking about gender no longer being recognized. So we're going to have, just as an exposure example, we let a boy who identifies as a girl play on the softball team and rocks one of the girl players. We say we're going to protect all of our students. Well, how are we going to know if the man who walks into the girls' locker room or the girls' bathroom is really there because they're transgender? We can't question them. When we say that we're going to respond to somebody who feels, and that's a big concern for me with this policy, is that we're talking about very subjective responses. We're talking about somebody feels like they have been advanced upon inappropriately. This opens the door and invites these accusations. We're opening the potential for us to just be constantly responding. We say we're going to keep these people, that they're going to be able to feel safe. Girls might not feel safe with boys in the locker room with them, in the bathroom with them. We need to consider how we're going to respond to that. We're also talking about curriculum in K through 12 regarding civility, and we're defining civility in terms of perceived gender identity. wouldn't want to be Jose. I would not want to have to come up with the curriculum that explains to 5-year-olds what gender identity relationships work, how they work, and how to create a curriculum of acceptance with that. They're complex issues. We're adults. We're discussing them. They're being discussed at every level in the courts, and now we're going to put them into the classrooms with our 5 and 6 and 7-year-olds, and then we're going to put physical conditions with men in areas that should be private, that should be respected, where we are creating a sense of perhaps safety concerns, perhaps discomfort. We say we're going to make them feel safe. I don't know how we're going to do that. At the very least, I think it warrants more attention than just saying the Fed said we have to do this and we're going to lose funding if we don't. The Feds should not have this level of absolute control of such significant and personal, just cultural, they should not be setting this level of cultural environment in our neighborhood schools. We should have something to say about it. For the amount of money we get from the Feds, we really should pull this discussion in-house.
Can I say something?
Previously.
Hello. I'm going to read an American School Board journal. It says, from a legal standpoint, school board exists for one reason, to govern K-12 schools by exercising their power as a policy-making body. Good policy-making produces a district that is focused in an educational sense and risk-free by legal standpoint. We spend a significant amount of time reviewing these policies. If you're talking about 1 or 2 policies, that's fine, but it looks like you are going through all the policies and you're not accepting, and we want to utilize our time in a productive way. So if this is we are talking about 1 or 2, that is okay, but I don't think so that all the policies, we need to start reviewing again. This is not the right thing to do. Thank you.
Any other comments? Mr. Roden.
I think it was stated earlier that regardless of the outcome, that if these are in fact voted upon and brought into service, that a board member still has the right and the obligation to, if there are questions, to pose those questions and seek on individual policies and ask answers for them and pose them. I don't think, Mrs. Belton, correct me if I'm wrong, that the committee it would be adverse to getting a reasonable volume. You're not going to get 1,000 all at once and give 1,000 answers, but on a periodic and a routine and a reasonable basis to respond to with answers to that. The answers may not be something that an individual board member likes, but we are obligated by law, and we take an oath that we swear to uphold the Constitution of the State of New York and the United States Constitution. And we are obligated to that. But if we do have questions individually, and I must say that my questions were answered by Alberta, like 1, 2, 3, I got answers on these things. I don't agree with them, but they're law. But a board member can still come and pose questions to who's ever on the policy committee at whatever time it comes through. Am I correct?
Absolutely correct. I think that the idea that when policies are established that they're going to be 100% the way you want them is really just not reality, and that it's always ongoing, and that things can always be improved upon. Again, this committee was directed by the board to make sure that our policy manual adhered to law, that practices were in fact current practices, and to look at suggestions made. The policy committee was not asked to develop personal opinions, to have philosophical conversations, although I think those might have been more interesting. Instead, give me a moment. Instead, for the first 3,000, we were given a binder, and every one of us read every policy in here. Every policy in here stated This is directly out of state education law. This is something that you do not have say over. And there's very few, some policies or regulation. There are very few policies in here that were labeled local, and it was labeled what you were doing that was not current. And again, our policy manual has not been updated, with very few exceptions, since 1996. So the task of the policy committee at this time, again, was those 3 directives. The majority of the work that has been done is minimal changes and adding law. Laws change consistently, and when they do, not everybody's happy about the changes, but that is the directive of the current policy committee.
Mrs. Lamont.
The idea that that the policies be consistent with the law is not the same as having to encode the entire law in policy. I don't know that we have to enshrine all of New York State policy into or regulation into our policy. If we have to follow state law, we have to follow state law. But the idea that we need to enshrine it as policy just because it's consistent with law, I don't think is appropriate. This feels just very cold. It feels very much like, we're just gonna dot our I's and cross our T's, and we're not gonna look at what we're actually doing and the impact that it's having on our children, our teachers, our classrooms, our community, our families who are upset. Again, the community came and said, please look at this and pause. I don't see why we have to step on the gas, why we have to do this without looking at it. I think it warrants the attention. That said, for the most part, the policies are not particularly, the bulk of the policies are rather standard, and I'll pick my battles, and I will motion that we table policy numbers 100 through 115E.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do we have a second on tabling?
I believe you already tabled the policy. What should happen next, you make your suggestion to the policy committee, have the policy committee, if they so wish, bring them back. At this point, we already tabled.
Yes.
No.
No,
Yes, we
not
did.
those specific.
Did we table?
We
Yes,
tabled
we
20.
Tabled 22.
Yes.
And we voted on to adopt the policy, did we not or not?
No, we didn't do
Not yet.
yet.
Okay, fine, in that case, I take away my.
Okay, is there a second to tabling 0100 inclusive through 0115E, I assume? You're
Yes.
including yours and these?
Yes.
Is there a second to that motion? Mrs. Pelton? Okay, all those in favor of tabling those policies? Mrs. Laval, Mrs. Karat, Mr. Rubin. All those opposed? Mr. Lumia, Mrs. Pelton, Mr. Selma, Dr. Rizvi, Mrs. Kelly. All right, now, do we have, back to the original, do we have?
We're just discussing all the others except 2250.
Yeah. Is there, well, it was still on the floor since it was not tabled. The only one that was tabled was 2250. All right, do we have a motion?
Can I say
Yes,
one thing?
yes, Mr. Rubin.
I'd like to just say that I just think that it was a misstatement to say that the policy committee acted on this without looking at it. I think the policy committee did a superb job and was very thorough from what I've seen in terms of their review and making these current and complicit with law and what we need to do. So to say that it was done, it implies in a haphazard measure. I don't think that was true. I think that they did look at it, and they really deserve a lot of pats on the back. And that still allows us the opportunity to question these things and to ask questions.
We still have a motion on the floor to adopt the policies exclusive of 2250. And it was seconded. Is there any further discussion, or are we ready for a vote? Mrs. Lamont.
I did not imply or mean to or intend to imply that the policy committee was not diligent in their effort to do and follow the directives. I think the directives limit what really we should do as a community, and seeing what the policies, once they were aligned with New York state law and edited and brought new policy in, warranted further attention than it got. And it's in no way, a suggestion that the policy committee didn't put tremendous effort into following the directives, as Mrs. Pelton said. And I appreciate the work that the policy committee put forth, and it was too much for me to look at all at once. So I understand that they did put tremendous effort forth. I think that what's in there, there's a lot of potential for a lot of problems, and as much as it's consistent with law, I don't know that law is going to protect us when we have situations of conflict in the schools where we haven't really stopped to consider how we're going to respond to these concerns. So I do thank the policy committee for the effort that they put forth, and I don't mean to diminish it. I think that these particular policies warrant further attention.
One more thing.
Mr. Rubin?
I also have to just say again that the policy committee did a wonderful job in this. And it's if what you're saying is that they did what they were supposed to do, and if they had a problem with them doing what they were supposed to do, then it should have been brought up when those types of concerns need to be brought up when the charges to a particular committee are established by this board. The charges were established, the subcommittee fulfilled those charges, and the personal opinions were minimized or left out of any review of what was put forth. And I think that's law.
Just one last comment on this. It's incumbent on each one of us to look at a specific policy. If we don't agree with that particular policy, to write to the policy committee what changes we want them to make. What immediate changes they can make. To just say, that I'm going to take all these policies, to me, it's just, I like to see specifically. I didn't see one specific equal opportunity, non-discrimination. One specific statement why you after reading that policy, why you disagree with. Equal opportunity, non-discrimination regulation. What? As people are supposed to. Unless you're specific with specific comments on specific policy, does it make sense to me? So it's incumbent, please. We have plenty of time to read all these policies, as difficult as they might be, to read, and as I read, and I made suggestions on one of the table, I didn't like it, and I made recommendations. They're going to look at it. They may agree with it, disagree with it. They have to look at their recommendations and say, Blumia, the way he's going to stand the way it is. Fine. But it just seems to me that it's incumbent on each one of us, if we disagree with the specific wording or specific policy, to be specific, and not just group everything into one thing. That to me is just, it's unjust to the committee. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay, Dr. Rizvi.
I agree with Mr. Blumia, and I can say something here that we, Ms. Groth and Ms. Tracy Fenton, we were in the policy committee meeting, and we did spend a significant amount of time, but you were not in the meeting, Ms. Kellen, but you were there all the time in the meeting, whatever time we spent. So my thing is that if you think that, if you have some problem with the policy meeting, then why you did not attend or why you did not ask us to go through that. Once we are done and we have spent such a significant time, why you are coming up with all these things? Why not while we were doing this, like the meeting and committee meetings? It's not easy to spend like your time on weekdays coming and doing, and Mrs. Pelton spent also, she was a good, very good chairperson, and we did work very well as a team plan. And like I said, Ms. Karen was also there, but if you had a recommendation why you did not come or ask us for those things at that time.
Yes, Mr. Carrier.
Just listening to all of the Board of Education members and getting my perspective from the administrative perspective, from the regulations perspective, and understanding that sometimes I'm really jealous that Alberta's spending way too much time on policy. And but I think just going back historically, the board said that they were going to spend the money with NISBA to get these policies. And the board also indicated that this was the process they were going to take in terms of having a bulk of policies come through and review. So it is an aggressive process, not to get into things too personally with my secretary, but there are times where I know, because she said I didn't sleep because I spent practically the entire night reading policies. So if the process was established to be like this, then if the question is that if the process is going to change, I think, because I'm listening to like two different things, where if the process is going to change, then that's a different vote or conversation that the board had already decided this is the process they would take. Working in central office administration for some time now, 10 years, I've done this twice, where 2 weekends, and I wouldn't want to do it again, where you just go through each and every policy and you revise it and you work, and literally nonstop, 2 weekends in a row. So if then once that gets quote unquote the stamp of approval, I think that what Trustee Pelton said though in terms of law, that you can go back to any of these policies. You can actually get them through, or then the other piece is that, or just pull the ones that you think need to be. I don't think no one's making a judgment call on any of them, more so in terms of just really saying that, they need to, maybe can we look at some of these again. I don't know if you noticed when I got up to speak to Mr. Lokema, because the board and members of the community had indicated that this traditional way of us going about getting our code of conduct approved right before the start of school is just not efficient. And the work has started. And because the work has started, we're ready to follow the directive of the Board of Education to come in June and present the code of conduct, have our public hearing, so that we can have it all ready and take the input and make any necessary revisions or changes throughout the summer, which is a great directive and idea that came from community members, to not just have this last minute September thing of the code of conduct. But I did go over to Darren just to make sure, because the same ones that were discussed, I had them all highlighted, because I know that you can vote yes, and if the Code of Conduct Committee will have certain conversations, I'm going to have to come back to then say, ooh, we need to review and look at some of these items as well. So for me, I think it's important to recognize the board is going to continue with this, and I'm not saying this in a judgmental way, with this very assertive way of going through the policies. And if they are, then if items need to be pulled, then that would be the second piece then for specific items to be pulled. And as I said, because I was ready to say, I think, maybe, but I went over to my team, and Dr. Bonk is the administrator, our project leader for policy and administration, but specifically to the code of conduct, these 10. And right now, we're not in that position, but just know that we may have to, come back and look at this, and I know that the board would then look at these policies to actually review and make sure that they're aligned to our code of conduct, as well as what we have to comply with in terms of DASA. So I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, I think the reason the board decided to take this approach to revising the policy manual was because the people who have been on the policy committee in the past told us that it was just very difficult to do it without guidance from outside, which is what NISBA is giving us, and with a definite timetable to move forward on them. Is there any more discussion before we take a vote? Mrs. Carrab.
I just want to follow up that this is a starting point. We took the aggressive action. The board allowed us to take the aggressive action to do this. It doesn't end here. We're going to be reviewing the second set that's coming along. And then as this comes into adoption, these policies can be debated and discussed and reviewed and revised, on a monthly basis through committee work and asking the president to put certain things on the agenda. So, we have to allow the process to work, and one of the policies that we have here is 2410, which is policy development, adoption, implementation, and review. And to just follow up on what Superintendent Carrion just said, is that we are responsible for adopting and assessing the effectiveness, and just as you have said, Mrs. Lavelle, but it's to provide a foundation, just the foundation, not the administration of the policy. The administration is responsible for coming to look at it and saying, okay, how are we going to deal with this? And of course, we're here to provide guidance and foundation for administrative action, but not to specify, in my opinion, not to specify exact administrative action and how they are to interpret the policy. We allow the foundation to remain strong, and we have the faith that they will take it and make sure that it's to the best interest of all the students in implementing the policies.
Mrs. Lamar.
This isn't the foundation I think we need to set. I'm not on the policy committee, and I'm not going to apologize for not being on the policy committee. This is my opportunity to voice my concerns about what's going into the policies. I do have specific numbered policy comments, but the policy has a theme. And if you want me to go list by list the policy items, I can gladly do that. I did go through the policies, and I did make comments on the specific items. But that collection of equal opportunity and non-discrimination and sexual harassment and bullying, the theme runs through them. I am far more concerned with setting the foundation and with the actual impact than the process. Processes are good, but the objective of the process is the outcome. And I don't think we need to do form over function and just get it done because we said we would. Mr. Carrion can bring it back because he's the superintendent, but I can't bring it back. So if Mr. Carrion doesn't bring it back, and I think it needs to come back, that's not an option for me. So I'm making my comments and my concerns known now. And it's not because I was too lazy to show up at a policy committee meeting, or because I didn't go thoroughly through the individual policies to note my concerns with the specific wording of the policy. It's because this process, as much as the people on the policy committee met at their, with their concern, I've been on the personnel committee. Do you know how many people we hired in the district this year? We have a meeting every 2 weeks. I look at what's in these packages. I concern myself with the decisions that we're making, and I'm concerned with the decision that we're making. And I'm more concerned with the decision that we're making than the procedure that we're going through to do it. That's just the approach that I'm taking. So we can go ahead and vote.
Mrs. Laval, could you tell us some of your specific ones?
Excuse me. No, this is not the time. In my opinion, this should have been done if the specific concerns about specific policies those should have been addressed to the policy committee prior to this evening's discussion, so they could think about it. I don't want to spend another hour here with specific policy concerns. If those policy concerns are legitimate, present them to the policy committee.
Mrs. Helen asked me a question, Mr.
Well,
Lumia.
I realize that, but it seems to me.
What I asked for was additional time, because I did, at the first reading, make my concerns known. I did,
To the committee?
since the first reading.
To the committee? Did you make a concern to the committee?
Lumia, I looked at the policies and I brought my concerns here because my request is, there's so much here. It has such tremendous impact. I just asked for an extra 2 weeks so that it could go to the policy committee with the specific line items, because there's so much that I wanted the extra time. So you voted no, but don't tell me it's my fault that the specific line items.
All I'm saying, that Ms. Laval, is that you have legitimate concerns, please write them down, send them to the committee, and send them to the board. I don't want to wait till this evening to constantly, to table everything. I'd like to see specific 100, what are the specific concerns that you have?
I did, you voted no.
No, you didn't, no. You grouped everything together into one big statement. You did not specifically state what you were against in 100. You did not specifically state what's 100 for an hour. 110, 110R, 110E, 150. You just grouped everything into one generalization and expected this particular board to say, we agree with you. I'd like to see specific objections to every one of those concerns. And you did not express them to me or to the committee. So that's why I voted no. Until such time that I see specifically every one of your concerns about these things here, I'll vote always no. Please send your concerns about those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 policies, whatever they are, send it to the committee, send it to the board, and if I think that I put.
I asked for time to do that, Mr. Lumia.
You had 2 weeks, for Pete's sake.
Mr. Lumia and Mrs. Laval, I asked, since we spent 45 minutes on general discussion of this, and Mrs. Laval mentioned that she had some specific objections. I thought it might expedite matters if she gave us some ideas right now. So do you have some specific ones that, and you could tell us the exact policy and tell us exactly what it is that is a problem, and perhaps Mrs. Pelton could explain why the committee is including that, and we would have some idea of what we're talking about. Some of them are required, some are local.
I'm going to do a point of order right now. Mrs. Pelton has no. Is this on? Mrs. Pelton is not obligated to make any position statement on behalf of that committee right now. So if you're asking for Mrs. Laval to make comments, that is not something that Mrs. Pelton, in my opinion, can make a statement on behalf of the entire committee. She has already stated why the actions were taken, and I think that is sufficient and just that is a sufficient justification to lead us to where we are here in terms of the presentation that she's put forth, that she and the committee have put forth.
I was not suggesting that Mrs. Pelton did not do her job sufficiently. However, whenever we bring something for a vote, if somebody on the board has a specific question or objection, it is helpful if those people who have the information, whether they be board members, committee members, or administrators, can clarify it right then so that we know what we're talking about instead of going on philosophically for a good deal of time. Perhaps if we can see specifically what we're talking about.
She can't do that, in my opinion. She's 1/3 of the committee, or 1/4 of the committee.
Well, since the committee is here, and some of them say quite clearly that the policy, for instance, the first one, 0100, is included with the additions in bold print because at the top it says required, it's X there, and what was added because it's required by state law. So if there was something like that, it seems quite possible that it could be said. Of course, if Mrs. Pelton, she doesn't have to, give a full report on anything in any case, but perhaps she might want to. And if not, I'm perfectly happy to say what I just did, 0100, it's required, and that's why the old print was added. So if there's anything specific that you would like to know, Mrs. Laval, and that perhaps we could elucidate on. And if not, and if Mrs. or Mrs. Pedro could also tell us that.
Can I say something?
Dr. Rizzi?
It looks like we are going through the same discussion again and again.
Right, that's
And
why
how
we're
much
trying
time
to get
are we
it
going to
today.
say in answer to your question, Mrs. Keller? I mean, we are nowhere in this.
Okay, fine. Then if we don't have any specifics, then we can get on to a vote. All right? All right. The motion's on the floor to adopt all the, and seconded, to adopt all the policies except 2250, which was tabled. All those in favor of adopting the policies, please raise your hand. Mr. Lumia, Mrs. Pelton, Mrs. Caraff, Mr. Rubin, Mr. Soma, Dr. Rizvi, Mrs. Keller. Those opposed? Mrs. Laval. 8.04, approval to retire policies.
Resolved that the Board of Education of the Washington Central School District does hereby retire the following policies effective May 17, 2016, as stated.
Just to clarify for everybody, these are being retired because, as is shown on the agenda, they were covered on other policies or consolidated. You could if you like. Okay. Alberta, do we need to read any more of the information? No. It's there on the agenda.
Thank you.
Thank you. Not essential, it's what sometimes they say it's not essential. It means that NYSBA does not view this policy as necessary or recommended because it doesn't offer much meaningful guidance, or it repeats the law, or it's administrative in nature, so that would be a regulation. And all the ones besides the non-essential one are covered in other policies. That's why we're retiring them, just so the policy manual is a little more compact and easier to read. All right? We have a motion. Mr. Soma, second. Mr. Lumia, discussion. All those in favor? Mr. Lumia, Mrs. Pelton, Mrs. Caraff, Mr. Rubin, Mr. Soma, Dr. Rizvi, Mrs. Keller. Opposed? Mrs. Laval. Board members may request additional agenda items, discussion items, or requests for information. Are there any amendments to the agenda? Seeing none, the next item is 10.01, comments from the public. Again, there is 30 minutes for comments, and the same rules apply as before, but this time it doesn't have to be an agenda item as long as it pertains to school district business. Would someone like to speak now?
And slow shower again, town of East Fishkill, please have a quick question.
There has been some communication throughout the district with regards to the Wappingers crew raising money for the damaged boats. We had an incident a couple of months ago, so I was just curious as to why the parents of students, crew, do we not carry insurance on those damaged boats? Do we own those boats? Do we lease those boats? Do we rent those boats? What is the circumstances regarding that as to why parents are asking for money from the community for fundraising? And if those boats were damaged, have we not settled and received money from our insurance company to replace or repair those damaged boats? So I was just wondering at some point if that could be addressed.
If anyone has a question, if you submit it to Mrs. Pago, our district clerk, it will be put, both the question and the answer, on the district website. If you just want another, yes, okay, it's already down, good. It will come out, thank you. We do it that way so that everybody finds out the answers and we have a complete and accurate answer. Are there any other people who would like to speak?
Very brief, I promise. Barbara Goodman again. One word that I did not hear in all this discussion of process is teachers. I heard board members. I heard board members consulting with administration. Administration, basically the way I live it, is that administration then tells teachers what to do in order to implement board policy, and then teachers roll their eyes and say, have they been in my classroom lately? So what I would love to see going forward is for the policy committee, I think part of the issue is not that you didn't do enough, but you didn't even tell people enough how much you've done. There's a lot of work that you've done, and I think if people are not clear about the things that are law and the things that are not. And what I would like to think about or request going forward is that you look at the stuff that is local and under local control, and have and see if you can find a team of teachers, maybe like one elementary, one middle school, one high school teacher, who would be willing to look over those policies to see if they have any implications in the classroom that we may not have thought of. Thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing no one, could we have a motion to adjourn? Mr. Rubin, second. Mr. Selma, all in favor?